Hey guys, Dalek44 here. I need no introduction, but I got one anyway. And the villain files are back in business, baby. I think we can all agree that the most evil of all evils in the world are politicians. And the most evil of politicians that we're going to talk about tonight is a Prime Minister. We've all had our fair share of bad Prime Ministers in this country. We've had a Prime Minister who was actually a fat green alien in disguise hoping to destroy the world with his family of criminals. We've had a Prime Minister who was nice until she let an alien organisation destroy an alien race in cold blood. We've had a Prime Minister who was actually a renegade Time Lord in an attempt to conquer the universe. And we had this fat wig-wearing idiot who didn't give us very good advice during the pandemic. But the Prime Minister I'm going to talk about tonight tops all of those in terms of evil doings. Brian Greene.
Brian Greene, a UK politician, became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom sometime after the fall of Harold Saxon, aka the Master. He came under criticism from the foreign governments after Martin Truman intercepted global broadcasts in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode Secrets of the Stars.
At first it seems that he couldn't have done any worse than the Master, aka Harold Saxon, did. But we were all proven wrong during the 456 event.
At the time of the 456 event, Brian expressed frustration and fear at dealing with the constant alien attacks, saying that he ran a country at sane from above. He met with John Frobisher about the return of the 456 and the need to remove any record of the first time Britain met them. Rather than take control, he left the matter to Frobisher, including the assassination of witnesses, so he could deny involvement if anything went wrong. Officially, I never knew. The next day, he met with Frobisher to discuss the crisis and made it clear to Frobisher that he would be blamed if things went wrong. Afterwards, he went to look at the gas tank being made for the 456 on floor 13 of Thames House. The tank was built for the 456 when the ambassador visited the next day. Greene addressed the nation the next morning, promising calm and stability. He did not have a high profile on day 3, only being seen observing the 456 landing at Thames House from his office in Downing Street. He witnessed a negotiation between Frobisher and the 456. Greene was reprimanded by General Pierce of the American military for trying to cover up the British government's prior involvement with the 456. On the 4th day of the event, Greene held a meeting of Cobra to discuss how to meet the 456's demands of 10% of Great Britain's children. Greene made a decision to exempt any Cobra members' children and grandchildren, including his own. This, and his refusal to make extended family exempt, was used by Home Secretary Denise Riley to argue that since they were throwing out a truly random lottery, they should have handed over the lowest 10% of children in the school league tables. Greene and John Frobisher arranged transport for this. However, Lois Habiba was spying on the meeting for Torchwood and tried to blackmail Greene into letting Jack Harkness's team do their job. Torchwood's show of strength spectacularly failed when the 456 casually murdered the entirety of Thames House. An angry Greene sneered, happy now at Habiba, and continued with the plan.
Any politician in his shoes would have thought of a sensible solution to deal with these aliens without causing any public panic. But not Brian Greene. He chose the coward's way route.
On the day he agreed to give the children to the 456, Greene had full control of the crisis taken from him and given to General Pierce, who oversaw the taking of the 10% of the children. He made an official news broadcast saying that it was safe for the children of Great Britain to be returned to schools, and that government representatives would be visiting certain schools to discuss a series of inoculations that would prevent the events of the past 4 days happening again. While some parents did believe his lies and sent their children back to school, other parents decided to keep their children home, not trusting the government since they refused to give any full details. Greene later told Frobisher that his children would be taken and given to the 456 so that the government would be seen to have suffered. Frobisher killed himself and his family to spare them this fate.
And after all that shit went down in England and across the world, how do you think Brian Greene took it?
At the end of the day, Greene was having a meeting in the cabinet room with Denise Riley and Frobisher's PA, Bridget Spears. Greene commented on how the situation turned out lucky for him after the 456 was defeated, as the American General Austin Pierce had taken over the operation and that they could blame the children's snatchings on him. Once he'd shown his first thought was to save his own skin, Spears blackmailed Green. She told him that she had used the tortured contact lenses to record the day's events in the cabinet room, including Green's comment on being lucky. Green threatened to have Spears arrested, but Riley let Spears go and implied that she would be taking over from him in the days to come. So it's implied that she became Prime Minister after the downfall of Brian Greene.
While the 456 initially failed to take the children of the world, their impact had a long-lasting effect on the human race, Great Britain in particular.
Green's actions caused the death of John Frobisher and his whole family, and it caused the death of Jack's grandson Stephen, and it caused the end of Torchwood for that time.
It's one thing to make deals with an alien threat that could conquer and destroy the human race at any time, but it's another thing entirely to actually meet with their demands. And that's what, in my opinion, makes Brian Greene the evilest of all evil Prime Ministers.
Even though we never actually saw his fate after the events of Children of Earth, most fans could assume that he probably stepped down by his own choice, or by the threat of blackmail after his time as Prime Minister ended. Although it was mentioned in the comic Don't Step on the Grass that Greene was still Prime Minister. But that's just a comic story and we have really nothing to go by TV series wise. And since we didn't actually get to see a Prime Minister within the TV series until Revolution of the Daleks, when we had a female Prime Minister advertising the Defence Stroke Daleks, we can assume that Greene probably stepped down as Prime Minister due to the threats of being blackmailed after the events of the 456. But there's been no definitive answer besides the comics, so speculation and the comics are all we have to go by. Brian Greene was portrayed by English stage, film and television actor Nicholas Fell, who gave a great performance for the character, showing off the frustrated side of the character as well as the devious side of him. Brian Greene has a couple of similarities to Gordon Brown, who was Prime Minister in 2009, the same year that Torchwood Children of Earth aired. And they both have colours in their last names and have reversed initials. And in the fan-submitted Doctor Who lockdown short story Education, 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 Brian Greene is mentioned to have been Lord High Chancellor and covered up papers about Harold Saxon. He is also mentioned to be no longer in Parliament by 28th of February 2021. So it in a way shows that Brian Greene's term as Prime Minister was cut short not long after the 456 event. And you could make the argument that first he was doing all of this out of fear of losing his position as Prime Minister and in fear of what the 456 will do to them if they don't meet with their demands. But when he's given the bad news to John Frobisher that his daughters would be taking part in the process, Greene showed no problem with taking the children by force if Frobisher didn't meet with his demands. Hell, the guy could hardly even look at him when he was delivering the news. And he even went so far as to want to blame the Americans on the event just to save his own ass. He speaks like a true politician.
We can all agree that Boris Johnson was a total idiot as Prime Minister when it came to the pandemic. But I think we can also agree on that his evil was nothing compared to Brian Greene, the worst Prime Minister Great Britain has ever had.
Whether you're into politics or not, there's no denying that Brian Greene is one of the most evil politicians of all time. He had a terrible impact on the British government as well as the country during the 456 event in Tortured Children of Earth, and he'll always go down in history as an irredeemable monster when it comes to politicians and prime ministers. And all that is what makes him a worthy or unworthy, depending on how you look at it, entry to the villain files.
And that's everything you need to know on former Prime Minister Brian Greene. Be sure to look out for more villain files in the future. I'm Dalek44, and I'll see you next time, folks.